Hey everybody, how's it going? Thanks for joining us. Hello to Jack, Asher, Andrew, Blue, Brian, Kwa, Moi, and I don't know how to say it. Sulayer? Sule. Hey Kwa. It's a mountain in Spain, Asher?
I believe so. Either a mountain or a mountain range. I think it's in Granada region as well.
I do feel like I should know that. Did you get my comment on your post about, where was it, Seville? Did you get my comment on that?
You've been, and you got a bee sting.
And the bee sting. Yeah, I went through my, I actually went through my photo album and I was trying to find the picture. I know I have it, and I found a bunch of others. Maybe I'll just share those with you. I should have brought them to the show today. Because I'm so cute and adorable. I'm like 23. And just like, I don't know. Yeah, I was like, how old was I? I don't remember. Maybe 24. I was 23. And yeah, that was a beautiful town. Another one of my favorite places was Cuenca. Did you ever get out there?
I've not visited.
Gotta get to Cuenca.
Spain's a big place. There's lots to see.
I guess. Okay, guys, thanks for coming to the Crypto Queen show today. We have some exciting and interesting guests on the show today, as well as the information that we'll be sharing. So we're going to start off the show with Andrew Hamilton and Brian of London. Brian, if you wanted to chip in as well, you certainly can, because you guys are kind of like a cohort. And we're going to cover the class action lawsuit that they're about to do up against Facebook, Twitter, Google. And then once we have our way with you, then we're going to move on to Asher, aka ABH12345. And we're going to talk about how you've been rewarding really good behavior on the platform of Hive. So, like, this is what I call a very fun show. It's fun mostly because I'm going to have fun. I don't know about the rest of you, but that's my plan. That's my own personal plan, is to have some fun. So starting out, we're going to kick off with some lawsuits, some legalese. Now, remember, just if you're following me and you want to catch any of my screen shares, I am supposedly on Vim right now. I didn't see it showing up and I don't have the patience to go check. So if I'm on Vim, go check. I might be on Vim. I'm on YouTube as Dear Little Scribe. And if you want to catch this video later, I do always post to podcast, and I will also post this entire conversation video form on my Hive blog. So you can always you can always catch my little vids after the fact. I usually do them like a day or two later. So that's what's going on. Remember, if you want to know when the show's coming up, you just follow so you can catch me live. I think it's more fun live, but some people like to enjoy it in the comfort of their, like, whatever they're doing. Also, what else do we want to talk about? Okay, so let's jump into it. Now, with JPB Liberty, which you are the, I guess, owner of, Andrew, can we just call you the CEO? I don't know what to call you. CEO of JPB?
Yeah, I'm the CEO. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just say that. CEO of JPB Liberty, and you guys here on Hive are going to know him as Apps Hamilton. Before we begin, though, and I'm going to refer to you as Andrew, if that's okay. We've kind of already established. Yeah. So, Andrew, before we begin, I have one very important question to ask you. And although you're not a U.S. resident, you're not born, raised here, you've worked here. I know you worked in D.C. for a little while doing antitrust. But you're originally from the Commonwealth of Australia, and you currently live in Israel. So... but you must know that there's a Broadway musical out there in your namesake, do you not?
Yes. Although, obviously, it's quite hard to go to Broadway musicals, or in fact, any musicals these days, because Corona's shut down the arts.
Yeah, it's shut down the arts, and like in the entire state of New York, as I understand it. So what they've done to counteract the loss of ticket sales is they've actually come up with an agreement, a contract with Disney, whereby Disney Plus has agreed, or rather probably begged, to host their show on their TV streaming platform. And I think what they ended up having to do was they had to actually cut a little bit of it out because there might have been like sections that were a little bit vulgar or maybe a little bit too adultish. So they made it a little bit more family friendly. And I actually watched it with my girls last week. And to this actual second, I actually still have some of the songs in my head. And for the purpose of not wanting to get like plagiarism rights and copyright like downvotes and also like discontinuances from YouTube, I will not now bust out into song, but I otherwise totes my goats would be doing so right now. Like, it was so much fun. It was pretty much like 100% rapping and then a little bit of fun not rapping, and it was basically telling the story of the Constitution, the U.S. Constitution, through the eyes of Hamilton. So it's a must see. If you can get Disney Plus from where you all are, I highly recommend it. I mean, I don't know, maybe that's not your thing, but anyway.
No, I'd like to see it. I mean, when I worked in the US at Sidley and Austin, which is so long ago, it's scary, but it's 1997.
Oh.
Yeah, everyone, even then, everyone said, "Oh, Alexander Hamilton," which was like, well, my name's actually Andrew. It's not that close, but anyway. Yeah.
Andrew.
So, yeah, I am aware of the connection. I know the history. I know a bit about U.S. Constitutional history and sort of stuff. So yeah.
It's a very, very fun story, and what I loved about it, just FYI to everyone, is that they actually kind of mixed races. There were hardly any, actually, come to think of it, hardly any white leads. Most of them were mixed race, which is really awesome because during that time, the issue of slavery was still kind of a predominant thing. Not to say that Hamilton was one of the more, like, apparently he and his wife were kind of anti-slave after once he came in office, but still, slavery was an issue then, and I just liked that they made it like mixed race. It was a lot of fun. Okay, so speaking of 1997, you said, so what I want to do today is I want to just give kind of a basic breakdown of what your lawsuit is about. We did this last time you were on my show, like 6 weeks ago, whenever that was. We talked about the lawsuit that you're doing, that you're planning on filing, and the legal basis for the lawsuit, and kind of broke it down there. So I wanted to just do a quick little recap of the intention of the lawsuit and try and differentiate between what you're actually doing versus what people might think you're doing. And then we're going to get into, I kind of want to pick on you a little bit, which I'm sure you will prevail, but just, you know how I am. You know how I am. Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned 1997, and I believe that you were working in Washington, D.C. in an antitrust firm. Is that correct?
I was working for Sidley and Austin, which is one of the biggest firms in the United States. I was working on the it was competition law issues arising out of the 1996 Telecommunications Act, which basically allowed new competitors into AT&T's business in long distance telephony, and also actually allowed them in local.
So and this is different than the Communications Decency Act of 1996, correct?
Yeah, no, this is the Telecommunications Act of 1996, which basically was about bringing competition to all areas of telecommunications.
Okay. So you've got.
I did a lot of litigation. It basically there was like about 130 pieces of almost identical legislation because it had to be filed at a state level. So it was MCI and whatever versus AC. I can't remember the names, but the new competitors versus AT&T, either one or two or three of them in pretty much every state in the union, and all the same issues over and over again. That was when I learned that the U.S. legal system was a bloody mess.
Okay, and so it sounds like you had some success. I mean,
well, I mean, I worked there. It was a very good experience as working as I was I'd actually just got admitted as a lawyer, but I'd already been working as a lawyer for a few years in Australia. Australia's main telecommunications company, Telstra, and it's actually the work I did before I went to the US to work for Sidley and Austin that was actually very relevant to this case, because in that job I had at Telstra, I was responsible. Telstra had standard contracts with everybody. It was the monopolist, and then there was competition induced. It had standard contracts with everybody, and I looked after the standard contracts with all the corporate and government clients for all the, not just regular telephony, but all the sophisticated, bigger channel, bigger bandwidth things, which obviously probably seem tiny by the standards of, 64K and 128K.
Right. Yeah, those are very small. Those are very small suits.
A 2 meg link. A 2 meg link was the biggest of them all. That was what really big companies had. They had a 2 meg link to Telstra. And so there were standard terms and conditions, and its competition was opening up, and there was, resale of Telstra services. And there's been a provision in Australian law for a very long time, way back into the early 70s, that says that when you have, if you have a contract with someone who you're competitive with, you can't have any restrictions on the services with regard to which you're competitive. It used to be called...
And this is just in the US. I mean, you're referring to the US, correct?
No, I'm referring to before the US. No, I'm referring to the work I did in Australia before I went to the US.
Okay, because here, I want to make that differentiation, because what I actually kind of have a follow-up question on that, because you did work in Australia, which lent itself to the lawsuits that you were doing in the US, which you were able to do because of the 1997 Telecommunications Act, which helped you to sue AT&T, which you were able to do because not only the act helped you with the anti competition law, or the competition laws, but also the thing is that here's where it gets warm for me, is you're working for a pretty, like, one of the top law firms in the US, especially when it comes to antitrust laws. And I'm just...
Yeah, we were representing AT&T, by the way.
You were representing... Oh, that does change things. Because when I asked you if you were very successful, it's very difficult to be successful against a new federal act like that. So I guess my question was then going to be, if you were in a major law firm and you couldn't even really super have success against one monolith like AT&T, what makes you think that in a minor law firm with, although 6 attorneys isn't small for one case, like, that's a lot of attorneys to have on one case. I mean, in the end, I do have questions about that, but what I want to know is, let's not answer that now. I want to ask another question first, and then we'll get to that, okay? But I just want to know, like, what makes you think that you and your very highly qualified and intelligent 6 attorneys are going to even stand a chance against, like, the 600 that might come against you. So that's going to be question number 2. Question number 1, though, is that last time you were on the show, I challenged you in the fact that in, as I said, in 96, the Supreme Court of US already made a blanket ruling that all private platforms are allowed. Now, again, I understand you're filing in Australia. We're not filing in the US, but it's relevant in my opinion, and I'll show you why. So the blanket ruling that all private platforms are allowed to make advertising and content publishing decisions for their own platforms. They're held immune to whatever users choose to publish and in good faith. So on the one hand, I'm Facebook and I'm not considered a publisher, but I get to edit the content. So that's kind of a contradiction. And I'm allowed to edit that content insofar as it is considered obscene, lewd, lascivious, filthy, excessively violent, harassing, or otherwise objectionable. So from my take on that is it's a little bit flexible. And so then here we are in 2020. And then in May of 2020, President Trump puts out this, actually, let's reverse that and say in the Digital Millennium Copyright Act of 1988, further rulings were made it imperative that these large platforms actually censor content that fits, at the very least, intellectual property violations. And so, maybe I don't have to monitor or censor you, but I'm allowed to censor you. However, when it comes to intellectual property, I must censor you, which I find so hilarious. Like, I must actually censor you. So why this is interesting and why I think this is relevant is because we're dealing with the Australian government, which does not have this act. And so here in the States, we have quite a bit of legal precedent that's going to make it very, very difficult for you or anyone to sue in the US. Is there a reason, other than the fact that that's where you're licensed, that you haven't chosen to...
No, little stop. I just need to cut across this because I think you've misunderstood the nature of this claim.
Oh, wait, hold on.
This claim,
You're right.
This claim isn't about whether they have the right to control the content on their platform. It's about the fact that they've made agreements with each other about restricting supply of services.
No, I get it. I'm sorry. Let me just...
So it's really, all the stuff you said is all very interesting, and it's a good history of things, and I understand it's the way things might be being looked at in the US.
No, that's my point. Let me just tell you. Andrew, hold on. Here's the thing. Is I realize that. I didn't get to my point. My point is that you're saying this doesn't actually have to do with that, and I get that. My point is, though, is that when you're talking about Google, you're talking about Google as though they are a threat to the competition. Google is not, in my understanding, is not a direct competitor to the crypto or the blockchain model.
Yes, it is.
Tell me how.
Google is competitive. Every single product that Google has, search, email, cloud services, everything, just about everything you can think of, there's a crypto project competing with them. Google is competitive with crypto. Facebook's competitive with crypto because, as we know, crypto is not just about the money. It's about the use of blockchains as platforms for Web 3.0 projects.
So you can prove that Google, I mean, Facebook we know, Twitter we know, Google,
but this is the issue. We're not the main, the area the main area we're proving competition, the core case, let's call it the core case, is not about Facebook competing in crypto. That's just a bonus. Okay? The core case is the fact that Facebook and Google and Twitter, their business is online advertising. And they are both suppliers and acquirers of online advertising to huge amounts. And they compete with almost all of their customers who are also acquirers and also suppliers of online advertising.
So it has nothing to...
That's what the core case is about.
Has nothing to do with crypto.
The crypto stuff's just an add-on bonus. The Libra stuff's just an add-on bonus. The core case is that Facebook competes with most of its own customers, and so does Google, and so does Twitter. They compete with them in online advertising. So just explain. So you obviously understand that Facebook and Google and Twitter supply online advertising to lots of people. Obviously, people understand that. But what people don't understand is that they also acquire an enormous amount of online advertising. Google spends $6 billion a year on online advertising. Facebook spends almost $2 billion, and Twitter spends a few $100,000. Plus, they acquire online advertising from their third-party networks. So they are huge acquirers of online advertising as well as suppliers. So because they're acquirers and they're competing for the acquisition of online advertising, and then they're also competing for the supply of online advertising. Your typical website, your typical crypto project, let's take Steemit, okay? Steemit wants to buy online advertising to advertise Steemit, wants to buy it on Google or Facebook. It's an acquirer, okay? But also, to a small extent, also is a supplier of online advertising because it has some advertising on its website. We remember Steemit did this. And this is true of just about everyone who has a website. promote your website, your project, but you also supply it back. Because you've got, Google something on and, you take a few ads. So basically everyone in the whole internet is competing with each other in the supply and acquisition of online advertising services. And in particular, Facebook, Google, and Twitter are competing with all their customers in the supply and acquisition of online advertising services.
Okay.
So that's the competition that's relevant. It's totally clear. And because they're competing with each other and because they have contracts with their customers, they can't have anything in them that restricts supply of online advertising services.
Okay. I think that's
it.
Yeah.
That's the case, and that's all we have to prove.
Yeah, I think that's where I misunderstood, because I thought you were claiming that as a crypto or as a social platform that we have a competitive space, but that was kind of just the byproduct of the bigger issue, which is that we all are suppliers and acquirers of advertising.
Yeah, that the crypto stuff and Facebook, Libra and stuff is a bonus, but it's not the core case. The core case is about online advertising.
Interesting. So if that's the case, then you do have a case. So, I mean, not you didn't before, but I just wanted to be able to establish that you did. So this one, in which case you have a case, is that they had the contracts in place and then they went back and reneged on the contracts, correct?
No, they didn't renege on the contracts. See, if they'd reneged on the contracts, it mightn't have been illegal. What they did was they put a condition, an ad ban clause in the contract. They put an ad ban clause that said we're restricting or banning supply of advertising related to cryptocurrency, and they put that in their contracts. They didn't cancel their contracts with people in crypto. They put in a clause. The contracts remained on foot, and they put in a clause that restricted supply. And so the result of that is that Facebook has a contract with everyone on the internet that has a clause in it that restricts supply of services that they're competitive. That's a cartel. Facebook has a contract with Google. Google has a contract with Facebook. Twitter has a contract with anyone who does advertising. Google has a contract with anyone that's ever used AdWords has a contract with Google that has a clause in it that restricts supply of services that they're competitive. They're all cartel contracts. The whole thing is there's millions and millions of cartel contracts, and the law in Australia is if you give effect to it, if you give effect to a cartel provision or contract, that's against the law. And of course they did give effect to it because they implemented it in their algorithms, all sorts of things.
Okay, cool.
So that's it.
It's very simple.
Shut case.
Very, very simple. Yeah, I was thinking what it was if people had content that was crypto related and then they wouldn't be able to advertise it, whereas previously they would have been. But you're not talking about individuals, you're talking about contracts with people who have the ability to allow or disallow advertising, correct? Yeah. That's a big difference.
So I have to say, we've fairly deliberately been a little bit unclear about this, so as to not give away our case to anybody else. But we're very, very close to filing now,
so it's a little more clear,
more open about exactly what our case is.
Oh, that's.
Can I just jump in with one thing, which was that I was working on this with Andrew for about 6 months or even more before Libra was announced. And Andrew's been working on this for more than a year before Libra was announced.
Oh, interesting.
The Facebook announcement of Libra was just a really good hook for us to gain some publicity at the time.
Yeah.
And because it made it easier to understand. If you understood, you could just see the evilness of culling an industry whilst developing your own version of it. But the reality is, Andrew had written down the legal strategy, which has remained largely unchanged. He wrote that down weeks after these guys put in their bans, and we didn't even know at the time that they were working on a Libra. And there's other things that have come to light with Twitter. Back in January 2018, Jack Dorsey of Twitter was tweeting out that he was very proud that Cash App was selling Bitcoin. And so that was in 2018, January, just as all the platforms were banning the advertising of crypto products.
Wow.
He was tweeting that his own platform, Cash, which is of course owned by Square, which is, he's the CEO of, that you're allowed to buy Bitcoin. And by the end of last year, Cash was recognized as one of the largest sellers of Bitcoin in the US.
Wow.
It overtook Coinbase. So
these are great. These are great.
Whilst banning the advertising. But that isn't what our case in Australia rests on. Sure, that helps.
It's helpful.
Good for us.
I think it shows intent. It shows intent and it shows knowledge. It shows knowledge of, and it shows intent of, and deliberate bias against and/or exclusion of, while you behind closed doors are doing the very thing that you're saying that these other contracts should not contain. I mean, I think that shows intent.
Well, and the other thing, this is the other thing, it doesn't sort of wind Andrew up, I think, to the degree it winds me up.
It winds me up.
Again, it's not a necessary legal part, but they called the whole industry frequently associated with deceptive and misleading practices, whilst they were then building their own versions of it. That gets me.
That gets me too.
And today, and now we find that the reason they gave this ban was to so-called protect consumers from scams. But actually what they've done is banned all the legitimate crypto projects while allowing scammers who are impersonating legitimate crypto projects to run riot, to the extent that they're being sued by people for allowing the scammers. Like they're being sued by Ripple.
That is so weird.
And Binance, and CZ of Binance has tweeted about it. It's like, the thing is, the core legal case is what I said it was, and they're liable. But, the judge might consider it, it's a bit of a technical case and mightn't hit them as hard as they might otherwise. But when the judge sees all the other stuff, the judge is going to throw not just the book, he's going to throw the whole library at them.
Okay, speaking of the judge, I mean, that's assuming you actually get in front of one. So, and you know what I mean by that. Like, it's all well and good, but if your case is as clear cut as you say it is, which it sounds like it is, then you know that your defendants are going to know this. I mean, I don't know what you think is going to happen, but in my mind, I'm thinking, what's to stop them from throwing multi-countersuits and motions to dismiss that you can't keep up with?
There's nothing. Okay, so it's not like the US. The US, I'll explain this, because the US doesn't have, in Australia and the UK and other places, that if you lose, you have to pay the other side's legal costs, and generally when you bring a case like this, you have to bring down a really quite big bond for security for costs, usually.
So they'll take it more seriously.
So the US system, so that system in Australia and the UK is what is the filter to get rid of unmeritorious cases.
Okay, so you
have to sign, and also in Australia, lawyers have to sign off that the case has merit. There's a whole lot of filters before the case even is filed. But in the US, it's different. You can file any load of crap, and I see so much crap filed.
You can.
And the courts then filter it out. And for that reason, there's all sorts of, motions to dismiss, and with a class action, it has to get certified. There's all sorts of things in the US. Most of those don't exist in Australian law. There are some, but they're not the same as in the US. They will file a strikeout application, but it's not like in the US. When you lose a strikeout application in Australia, the judge just tells you how to make your statement of claim better. It's almost unheard of for a statement of claim to be actually completely thrown out. In most cases, there are multiple strikeouts, but it's really just about amending your statement of claim to make it better. We're trying to get ours right the first time, but, seeing as, in class actions run by the biggest companies, in biggest law firms, they get struck out and refile, struck out and refile. No, not refile. They get struck
Yes.
out parts of their statement of claim, and they have to keep amending it. And
Yes.
by the time it actually goes forth, it's the 6th version.
Yeah.
But that
Amended.
doesn't actually knock out the case. It just actually helps you improve it. It doesn't, because the judge just tells you the bits of your statement of claim that aren't quite clear enough, and
Okay.
says go fix that bit. So the main issue with that is costs, is legal costs. That if you lose these strikeouts, you have to pay the other side's legal costs normally.
Okay. Are you okay with that?
So, that's why we've been trying to raise, really quite large amounts of money. But let's just say we've found a way around it.
Okay.
Someone gave me a really big birthday present, and changed the Australian law. So it's they've accidentally written my most favourite provision in the Australian law ever.
Oh, so it sounds like you would love to share it, but can't.
But basically, tell you we've got a secret weapon that completely neutralises Facebook, Google, and Twitter's massive advantage in money and lawyers they can pay. Their advantages are completely neutralised by two things: this law and COVID, which means everyone's appearing in court on Microsoft Teams, which means it weakens the position of all the big name barristers and stuff like that, because they're all on a video call, which they don't like.
So why does it weaken their position? Would they have originally said, "Oh, I can't make it, Your Honor. I have this, that, and the other, so we're gonna have to waylay the court hearing"? Why does it weaken their position?
No, they wouldn't have done that. But the issue is, Australia has separation between barristers and solicitors.
Yeah.
And barristers are the ones that appear in court, and that's all they do. So the really good ones know every twitch of the judge's, eyelash. They read the body language and stuff like that. They have a presence. They really have a presence in the court. And they know the judges, because the judges were people that were barristers just like them, top barristers just like them, often only a few years ago. But, having to appear by video conference actually, it weakens all those things.
Because they can't sit and watch the judge?
Well, they see the judge, but it's on video. It's not,
It's different.
It's not the same. So we've discovered a secret weapon that means we don't need as much money as we thought we did, and we can go forward much more quickly.
Wow. I suppose we'll have to wait and hear what that is, huh?
Yeah. I'm not going to say what that is, but we're able to go forward much more quickly. We still want to raise some more money, and we'll continue to want to raise money once we file, but we don't need as much money as we thought.
That's nice.
Yeah. So
that's really encouraging. Okay, so the next.
So in terms of countersuits, what countersuit? We're not disclosing who the plaintiff's going to be. It might change. There's a few different options, but it's just going to be some totally regular person, with no presence. It's there's nothing you can sue whoever it is. It's going to be just a
totally benign.
There's nothing you can sue them for.
Yeah.
Certainly not in America, but even in Australia. And by the way, I have been involved in class actions where, people threaten defamation and stuff like that. But, defamation's a double-edged sword. You threaten defamation,
you're going to get it back.
You've got to actually prove that, you say that the person said, legally or whatever, it's, the classic case is, Graham, what's her name? With the anti-Semite, they made a movie.
I'm trying to remember. In London, Deborah Lipstadt.
Deborah Lipstadt. David Irving. Deborah Lipstadt. Yeah, you have to be very careful bringing a defamation case, because it can just end up backfiring in your face.
So you're gonna pick someone benign.
Look, I'm not saying this is gonna be easy peasy. I'm not I've been around. I've fought enough cases to know everything will be extremely hard fought, and they will try everything they can. But it's not like America. There's just not. You
can't play games.
Many things that that you can do to stop this going forward?
That put a little smile on my face. Because I feel like the last time we spoke, I was still kind of stuck in the US mentality where we don't have as much protectionism here. Like it's really difficult to have equal footing in our legal system. It really is.
You've got to also see it from the other point of view, which is we're taking them on away from. This is Andrew's home turf. Andrew knows people there. I mean, I know this because we are dealing with lawyers and barristers there, and everybody knows him. And whereas Google, Facebook, and Twitter, they're out of their home territory. They've got no political clout. They are not liked. The current government of Australia has produced copious, huge reports complaining about how anti-competitive they are and what they've done to the media industry. And
well, our own government currently actually has the same position. Currently,
but Australia was leading the pack on this. Australia did this thing more a year and a half ago. No, even it's getting to be 2 years ago. They started it and they finished it a year ago. Australia's way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
And the Australian Treasurer, which is like the Secretary of the Treasury, who's very probably next in line to be Prime Minister, has like really gone after them, front page of the papers all the time against them. So they're not going to we'll get a fair trial in Australia.
Okay.
And they've got no lobbying, they've got no significant lobbying presence. And you've also got to remember what these are American companies. And for whatever, it's not that I want to take down. We don't want to take them down because they're American. That's for sure. I mean, Andrew and I are both amazingly positive towards America, the spirit of America. But you've got to also see it in the rest of the world. Google, Facebook, and Twitter employ almost nobody. They've got skeleton crews for the size of the companies that they are in Australia. For the amount of turnover they generate, they've got very few employees. They pay next to nothing in taxes, and they just ship money out of the country in huge buckets. It's just a bottomless a bucket with a hole in it.
Okay.
They pour Australian money in and send it all to Ireland or Singapore.
Okay.
And everybody has now realised that, and they don't like it.
Okay.
And so they've got no political cover. They've got no lobbying cover. The judges are going to be, fair. I mean, now whether we find one that's sort of got the technical head for this is, but we're trying to present this. That's why crypto becomes a very minor detail, really.
Right.
But it's just all we have to do is present it as a competitive new technology that could be competitive. That's all we have to do.
Huh.
And then
Set a little
we're
bit
in a
of
position to tell a story.
You're laying a little bit of groundwork. It sounds like Australia government has already laid a little bit of groundwork for you, and now you're just coming in and actually putting some applicability to some of that groundwork. So, Brian, you posted a link to the Daily Mail recently, and I just dropped the link in the chats. You can also head over to YouTube or Vim. I've got it on the screen. Cryptocurrency entrepreneurs to sue Google, Facebook, and Twitter in an Australian class action lawsuit they claim could cost the social media giants up to $300 billion. And then what he says is interesting. He says, and it sounds like he's done a pretty good job. Entrepreneurs say that tech giants hurt their business by banning crypto advertising, and that the David and Goliath case has attracted litigants with USD 600 million, aka Australian would be 872 million worth of claims so far, a number that has increased as more people join. The no-win, no-fee case has now been put before a senior barrister for review pending funding to file. So what's going to bring us up to the 300 billion mark?
Okay, so I should just explain how class actions work and how litigation funding works, because I understand it is confusing. What's the 600 million, which is about 700 million now, and what's the 300 billion? Okay, the answer is this. when you bring a class action, you define the class, and we're defining the class as pretty much, the whole industry, anyone that owned crypto, anyone that had a crypto project, a crypto-related business. So just looking at all the people, the ownership of cryptos, it's basically everyone that owned crypto. I mean, we're not including, it's important to say, we're not including every bloody coin, because there's thousands of them. That just would complicate the case. Including basically the top 50, and of course Hive, and a few others. And also basically, if people sign up with us, and I'll explain, we'll include their coin, but we're not including every coin, but we're including the ones that capture about 95% of the losses. So the losses on the cryptocurrency, the market's dropped 53% when Facebook banned, 30% when Google banned, and 25% when Twitter banned. And the total of those losses in value of cryptocurrency is like $340 billion.
So you actually
So that's where that, just let me think, so that's where that number comes from. That's the total claim. That's what Google and Facebook and Twitter face. Okay, that's what they might have to pay. The smaller amount is how many people who've signed up with JPB Liberty and agreed to give 25% of their winnings to the investors and 5% to JPB Liberty. So that's what the value of the case is to an investor. Okay, so that's how much we might get, or the people that invest might get a percentage. That's how we fund it, by getting people to agree to give a percentage of a case they could never bring themselves. And then you put all that together, and then it's worth something, and you can raise money on it. So that's the difference between the two numbers. The 600 or 700 million US dollars will rise as people sign up to the case. It will never get to 300 billion, because obviously only a small percentage of people will probably sign up, but it will probably still go up quite a lot, because even if you don't sign with us, you stand to still get some sort of payout. If you've got any particular, like if you just held Ethereum, and nothing else, you probably wouldn't need to sign up with us. You just get whatever you're going to get. But if you had a crypto project, you had your own token that's not going to be included in the top 50 or something like that, you need to sign up with us to get the full amount of your claim. You might get a smaller amount, and also people will want to sign up to support us because of what we're doing. Also, there's things like we're going to be asking for free advertising for everyone in the crypto industry that was harmed. That might be limited to only the people that signed up with us, because the judge might say, I don't know, or something like that. But, there's a lot of benefits to sign up with us, even if you don't sign up with us, you'll get something if we win.
So you're basically taking clients on a lien basis, or on lien, and then you're taking investors who see an advantage, like a return on investment if you win, like a business proposal.
Yeah, that's what litigation funding is. It creates a book. You build a book of claimants, all of whom have agreed to give 30% to the investors.
Okay.
And then once you've built a big enough book, and you've got a decent case, you then go out to investors and say, we've got, this big book and this good case, it's a good investment for you to invest, because, we might have to spend, we thought we had to spend 10, but maybe we're going to have to spend 1, whatever, we might spend 5, but, the payouts could be 100 or 200 or even $1 billion, depending on how many people sign up and how it goes.
Right, and it sounds to me like, as you gain some footing with the judges, that you may actually have some negotiating and settlement power, and at that point, then you're going to be looking at taking out settlement money, I presume. I mean, if you're as well off legally as you say you are, they're going to be wanting to extend a settlement offer.
Yeah, they're going to want to settle when they realise, but they won't take us seriously, because with respect to your country, men and women, Americans don't take anyone seriously outside America until the sword is at their throat. and they certainly don't take a bunch of strange guys in Israel seriously. I don't think they're taking us seriously, and they won't.
That's great.
And,
that's great for you.
So yeah.
No, that's great.
I mean, maybe they're listening in on this call, but I sort of doubt it. I think they'll listen to this in about 6 months or 9 months time and go, shit, why weren't we listening?
Why weren't we paying attention to little Scribe, who really had no clue? Yeah, but that serves to your advantage. It gives you kind of a thief in the night. Not that you're a thief, but it does give you that.
I call it where it's the commando approach. Where,
commando.
It's a commando raid.
Isn't the commando approach also like undergarmentless?
Well, it does.
Oh, well, that's not what we were referring to.
No.
Are you sure? You're going to show up in court undergarmentless. I don't know if that's going to go over well.
Okay, look, I served in the Australian military. Commando means, means special forces.
Yes, it does. I'm aware. But
I do like the fact that I'm using Twitter quite extensively, and a great deal of our sign-ups so far have come through Twitter. And in fact, that Daily Mail article is a result of someone following me on Twitter who liked the story and she wanted to write the story.
Oh, well, she did a fabulous job. I liked her writing style. She covered it really well. My question
I want to actually just give a shout out because, I'm really hard on sort of modern journalism, but every now and then you uncover a real journalist, and journalism has been gutted by Facebook and Google particularly. Yeah. And this person, I'm not going to go into sort of hugely, it's a part-time job writing for the Daily Mail, and most of the time she does not get to write proper stories.
Yeah.
And even this one was so hard to get published. And
really?
It was a real piece of journalism, and she wrote it properly, because to take this story and distill it and to write it for a general audience is a
very difficult job.
That's a skill. It's an absolutely brilliant skill.
She really watered it down.
I cry for how rare it is. And so that article was a fantastic.
Well, she quotes you, Brian. She quotes you. She says, where do I have it here? It says, Brian Bishko, JPB Liberties Israel. Is that right? Are you Bishko?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
So JPB Liberties Israeli-based Vice President of Technology and Public Affairs, and himself a conservative blogger, said the social media giants had become too large, and I quote, I think Facebook is too powerful to exist in the world. I honestly think it's a danger to the world, end quote. And then Dr. Bishko said the ban on cryptocurrency advertising was also crushing new social media networks that run on blockchains, such as Hive, which pays content creators in its own Hive cryptocurrency. Hive, which back then was called Steam, had been growing and growing, and suddenly they couldn't advertise on Facebook and get new users. That's almost accurate. It was back then called Steam, but we are separate, so maybe that would have been nice to fit. But she did a nice job.
I'm faced with when you're dealing with a completely general audience, and I know.
That's difficult to,
deep inside the Hive split as it could possibly. I know exactly what sort of hard fork, soft fork. I know all that stuff. But you can't use the word hard fork when you're talking.
Nope, you can't, and I think that's fine. So you said.
I think that phrasing is as good as it can be for 5 minutes to describe, what we all lived through for 2 months, really.
I think, and she's got a certain number of words that she can squeeze into a page. It's understandable why she would have explained it that way. It's like there's
listen, I think it's the first mention of Steam or Hive in the world's largest online newspaper, which is what the Daily Mail is. The Daily Mail is the #1 English language newspaper.
Is it? Is it?
Yes. It comes above all the others like New York Times. Only Yahoo or CNN's websites consistently come above it for news.
This is interesting.
Yahoo's just republishing. So it's actually the second biggest original source of news in English language in the world after CNN.
I was going to say we have CNN, Yahoo, and I guess now Daily Mail. So she's not insignificant. She saw you
No,
on
that
Twitter.
article, and I mean, look at it this way: how often has a crypto story gone from the mainstream back into the crypto press? Because we've got all the crypto press now covering the story, because this is a man bites dog story. Because normally, you get 1,000 crypto stories a month, and none of them make it into the mainstream, or one does, the Twitter hack. But then it goes back the other way with a mainstream story that now the crypto press has been forced to cover a little bit more. So that's quite a coup, I think.
Well, I think it's an accomplishment, that's for sure, that you've gotten that far in the press, and it's going to get, might snowball. It's kind of fun to be a little bit at the beginning of the front end of that. Hopefully, I can help cover you guys some more. I realize I'm not Daily Mail, but I do love that you've come and entertained our community here. One of the things I'm interested in, though, is just the fact that, like, as you were saying earlier, Andrew, is this really isn't primarily about crypto. It's simply a byproduct. And so, Brian, when you're having this interview with the author here of the Daily Mail article, obviously it seems like it's a little bit more focused on the crypto angle, and it does have relevance, but when it gets down to it legally, we're really just talking about advertising, the right to acquire and produce and promote advertising. It just so happens that we're a crypto community, so it definitely blatantly affects us. And the majority, if not the entirety of your plaintiff, will consist of those crypto users. My question is, you've mentioned it a little bit here, Andrew, in that you have certain criteria that your plaintiffs fit. So just to kind of help you, your investors are going to be more likely to invest more, and you're more likely to get more investors as you acquire new plaintiffs. So as those plaintiffs are acquired, what are the criteria that you're specifically looking for? Because I mean, I'm just like a nobody really in the scheme of things. I blog, I post, I hive, I make videos. Like, how am I going to know whether I qualify or someone ordinary? What makes them distinct, and what kind of a case would you take or rather add to your conglomeration of plaintiffs?
Okay, so look, the first and the most simple thing is that anyone that held crypto, a top 50 or including Steam, cryptocurrency in 2018 is included. As long as I think we've got a minimum of $100. As long as you held more than $100 worth of crypto in 2018, then you can sign up. You're part of the case.
Okay.
But then let's just talk about your specific situation, because we actually just added in a new subclass, as we call it, which is precisely for crypto bloggers, crypto media, and things like that. Because we actually, we had all the obvious things like, people that manufactured mining equipment and miners and exchanges and things, and we actually left, we didn't really have like crypto media and bloggers covered, so we've added that in, and Brian can explain why actually crypto bloggers, crypto media actually is like a double or even triple whammy effect of the ad ban. And I just want to say the core case is about online advertising, but what was banned was the crypto industry's online advertising. So that's who suffered damage. So it is related to crypto. We're the ones that suffered the damage. But the actual core case is about online advertising. Yeah.
So I'll just give you a quick example. Let's say that you're running a blog or a news site that's focused on crypto, say Cointelegraph. Now, Cointelegraph is going to want to run Google Ads because that's the easiest way to get advertising platform. That's the no work way. That means that you can spend most of your time doing what you want to do, which is write about crypto stories, and then there's a bar on the side that just shows adverts and you collect the money. But what the advertising ban did for something like Cointelegraph, any reasonably well-trafficked crypto site was, it meant that the crypto projects who would want to advertise predominantly but not only to crypto enthusiasts, they couldn't buy adverts through the Google system.
Correct.
So that meant that there were no crypto-focused adverts to show on crypto-focused websites. So that depresses the value of the advertising space, all of their websites.
Which you've obviously established that you'll be able to prove due to those numbers going down significantly.
We've got tons of proof of this. Because we've got actual real numbers of drop-offs. And also all of these YouTubers, you know, suddenly if you're not allowed to buy adverts that involve crypto, why would you want to, you know, the number of adverts that can be shown on a crypto YouTube channel drops dramatically. And it's like there's three different ways in which you've damaged the blogger, because then also these bloggers, they might want to advertise their own site elsewhere.
Correct.
Not allowed to do that, banned on crypto.
Correct. Yes.
So they're covered.
Yeah.
And whilst we haven't gone into the specific damages these sites case by case, we know that the damage is there, and that's why we added that whole class, because you know they might not even have held much crypto at the time, but their whole business would have been depressed by being unable to monetize their sites, and it's them. They are true competitors to Facebook and Google and Twitter, because what are they competing on?
I wouldn't then
attention.
Because I wouldn't have been necessarily I could have been considered a business owner at the time, but I wouldn't necessarily qualify for that.
Yeah. And also, Brian, you forgot that the third element of the triple whammy is that it depressed the value of crypto keywords.
Yes, obviously it you know, because it's an online bidding system, if you've taken out all the people who can bid for that keyword,
then it's not a bid.
You've made the value of any advert shown on a crypto site lower, because you know they might be showing shoes or cars, whereas the audience is tailored for crypto.
Okay, last question I have is, what about someone like Jerry Banfield? I mean, I feel like he kind of fits into the perfect description of the perfect plaintiff, because of not only the position that he was in, where he was multi-posting to several different platforms, among which were these three that you're mentioning, but also he was advertising, and also he owned a level of crypto, and also most of his advertising had to do with coming to these platforms and earning crypto on them. Like, how is he not the most ideal candidate? And if so, why are we not? Where is he?
Yeah, well, I just want to say, look, Jerry Banfield did a very wonderful thing in that he conducted a very extensive crowd-funded campaign with paid advertising on Google and Facebook. He spent $65,000 of crowd-funded money. He documented it very carefully in a spreadsheet. He documented each campaign in a post on Steam with a huge amount of information, including all the screenshots from the Google Analytics and the Facebook Analytics and all that sort of stuff. He actually created the most amazing piece of evidence of the impact of Steam being advertised on Facebook and Google, and it also happens to correspond with Penguin Pablo and someone else, Arcane Doob statistics. Well, let me tell you this: the very day before Facebook banned crypto ads was the record number of new users to Steam, 20,000 in a day. Okay.
Wow.
It was a continual rising on every single metric: new user, new engagements, posts, votes. Every single thing was up to the 30th of January 2018, and then it started going down.
Correct.
So it's brilliant. It's a very strong piece of evidence, and we would love to talk to Joe Banfield. Obviously, he's posted this stuff. It's immutably on the blockchain, and we're going to use it, but we would love to, firstly, he has a big claim, and we'd love to be in connection with him. We're not planning to use him as a plaintiff, so he doesn't have to worry about, putting his head above a thing, but we would like him as a witness, not a sting or high witness,
I see.
But like a witness.
A
Basically,
real
all
witness.
we need him to do is to write an affidavit that says, yes, I'm Jerry Banfield who wrote all these posts, and that's my recollection of, that's my contemporaneous file note of everything I did. That's all he needs to write. That would be helpful to us, and we'll make it worth his while. So, but if anyone can get in contact with Jerry Banfield, and put him in contact with us. We'd really like to speak to him, and we'll really make it worth his while.
Like, unfortunately with Jerry Banfield, we have the unfortunate reality that he doesn't really look at his comments. So if anyone ever actually has access to him on any platform or any messaging device.
Yeah, I have sent him messages on just about every method I can find.
So if he has nothing to gain as a plaintiff, I mean,
we don't need him as an actual plaintiff, but
just joining the class action, and just someone who gives a witness statement that says, yes, these are my posts. Basically, that's all we need, because we can prove that they're his posts by proving to the judge about blockchains being immutable and everything being a JSON transaction.
Yeah.
They're signed by private keys, but that involves us getting into technical complexity that we'd prefer not to.
Right.
It'd just be easier if you just said yes, of course.
Because you're gonna have to overcome hearsay objections, and you'll need to have authenticity. So.
Well, yeah, it's not. I mean, it's not. There's yes. It will also help if he gives direct testimony. It's his direct testimony. It's not hearsay.
Yeah.
That's absolutely true. There are other ways. These are business records, and business records is an exemption to the hearsay. But it's better if he's like actually putting this stuff into evidence himself. That would be better. And also, I'm sure there's a lot of other things that he's done and impact that he's had. That's the other thing. I'm sure he's suffered a lot of loss out of it that wasn't documented on Steam. And if he's in contact with us, we can know what those losses are and include it in the claim and make sure he gets the full recovery of what he's done, rather than just a part recovery that anybody in crypto is going to get.
Well, and that's the other thing is, can a non-plaintiff and or can a witness and or can an investor receive? Well, obviously investor, but could you treat him as an investor with sweat equity even though he's a witness?
Yeah.
Okay.
Of course we can.
Well, then let's.
We can and do reward people that help us with SFUB tokens, which are that they're the SFUB tokens get that 25% of the 700 million. It's like, I'm assuming we got 100% recovery, which we won't, but you say it's 10% of it. It's still a lot.
And then my last question is, do potential plaintiffs have any restrictions with residency or international residency, or because your Australian-based case, the jurisdictionally Australia, but I mean, could I be from anywhere?
Look, firstly, the class members can be from anywhere.
Okay.
And the actual lead plaintiffs can be from anywhere technically, but we are probably we're trying to get an Australian because it just looks better. It's not like technically required, but it'll just be more. It'll just cause less issues if we have someone who's actually Australian.
Okay. So if you know
that's another reason why we wouldn't use Jerry Banfield for plaintiff. We don't want an American as the plaintiff. We want an Australian as the plaintiff. The actual lead plaintiff to be Australian.
There's a ton of Australians on the Steem and Hive blockchains. I know Jack Miller would probably have been in touch with you. I know there's a ton of them who have quite a bit of investment into cryptocurrency, whether it be Hive or Bitcoin is kind of irrelevant. But if that's the only criteria and that they would have been in a position to advertise and lose money from said advertisement not being used, then I think those are pretty great criteria.
No, you don't have to have lost. You don't have to have advertised on Facebook or Google. Like, obviously, if you have and if you're a project, you've got specific claims about that. But just there was a cartel that was illegal. It banned all the advertising. You ban advertising. You drop demand. Price drops. Real simple economics 101. So that means that anyone who held cryptocurrency was damaged by the cartel. So you don't have to have advertised on Facebook yourself. If you have, that's even better, but you don't have to.
Because I feel like another approach to sort of bolster those investors' hopes in the value would be to simply get. I mean, it might be too annoying than what it's worth, but to get someone like me whose case might be in the end worth only $100. But if I'm going to join your class and say, yeah, I'll give you, I'll give you all my earnings. Like, I'll give you all $100 of my earnings if it helps your case. Like,
No, that little Sky, we don't want all $100. Actually, it's we've deliberately, sometimes people take 30%, but we've deliberately kept it at 30%. And if so many people signed up that it became a really large number, we'd probably reduce it because the court won't want us making an absolutely obscene amount.
Well,
of money.
in either event, though, like someone like me could come on and just say, my case is only worth 50 probably, or 100 or 200 at most. But if you had 500 or 1,000 of us, that could increase.
Yeah. Also, but actually, what really helps the most is when someone really big, like a crypto exchange or someone like that. And we have had those sorts, or a big crypto project,
Okay, cool.
That can increase the value of the claim by $100 million sign up.
Okay, great.
So, so that's what, we basically, the numbers, smaller people are great too. It's also great to have a large number.
Yeah.
We're now starting to get close to 600 people who've signed up, which is, significantly up from last time we spoke. But, in terms of,
logistically, it just makes more sense logistically to not go chasing after a bunch of little fuzzy bunnies, but just to have some more significant meat on the bones. I get it.
At this stage,
we don't have the energy to chase after.
Yeah.
We make it very easy to sign up on the website, and then people hear about it in the media, then they check us out and they sign it up. And that's right. We've put on, I think, 100 sign-ups in the last few days from this media.
So can you drop the link to the sign up in case someone's interested? Or would you rather keep that more?
That.
Can you do that?
I'll do that. Yeah. I just wanted to say one other thing, which is that, I think we've had we've been going at this. We got our major press a year ago. And there was quite a different feeling. There was a lot more negativity, and people just didn't believe it. I think we're still here a year later, which we have not been sitting still for a year. And in fact, the case has got much better in the last year because we've learned about Libra, we've learned about the other things going on, and the whole anti-cartel, everywhere there is anti-cartel action going on. America, I spent 2.5 hours today watching a Senate testimony, actually from last year, going over that our case, all of this strengthens our case in Australia, and it has also strengthened the credibility of our case. We are real. Andrew and I are still here, and what I foresee is happening is once we file this thing, and then it will get big press because Reuters, Associated Press, these people, and I've spoken with Bloomberg, for example. They won't publish an article now until it files, but once it files, they're going to. And that's when people like CZ at Binance, he's going to have to look at his balance sheet because we're going to be holding. It could be $1 billion for a big exchange, and they're going to have to wonder whether they must join this case.
Yeah, because it affects them.
And suddenly, these big exchanges, even though they might not want to go up against Google and Facebook, they can anonymously join this case.
They can.
They do not have to be named, and they won't be named unless they want to be. But there are some very, very, very big crypto.
What's keeping them from being a client? What's keeping them? What are they afraid of?
I think it's just a matter of whether they've heard about it, and you've got to also remember, everybody is scared of Google and Facebook.
Yeah.
Everybody in technology, and if you're not scared of them, you don't really understand how any of these industries work because you're either waiting to be bought by them,
or smushed.
But what makes crypto and what makes things like Hive so different is exactly what we saw when Justin Sun came along and bought Steam. He thought he bought Steam. He didn't buy Steam because the community all up and left and we're all on Hive. And that's why. This is back to the reason. In early 2018, Zuckerberg looked around and all of these companies had raised billions of dollars in ICOs, and Zuckerberg was smart enough to realize that you can't buy these decentralized projects. Even if you've got more billions than they do, the tokens, the ICO tokens, they didn't give you control of a project. They didn't give you ownership. That you couldn't subvert them in exactly the same way that even if Justin Sun can come along and buy all of the Steam or a controlling interest in the Steam, he didn't get the community because we moved, because it was open source.
Which you couldn't do on Facebook. You couldn't do.
And Facebook didn't have, already by 2018, after the year of 2017, Facebook and Google, to a certain extent, neither of them had enough money to do their normal method, which was to buy and crush competition. And I think that we are heading towards the most epic battle. And that underlies it. That's what Andrew and I are doing this for, that battle, for this freedom model versus central control, for the Soviet Union versus what America used to stand for before before the current issues.
Yes,
that's what we're doing it for.
Yeah, for web to return freedom to the internet, and we've got a little analogy that I wanted to share with you. Should we share the cow analogy?
Yeah, do the cows.
Okay. So, we're old enough to remember the internet in its early stages, what we'll call the Web 1.0.
Yeah.
And Web 1.0 was, there was a lot of Web 1.0, but no one had worked out how to monetize. So there were cows, but they roamed free, and no one worked out how to milk them and make it into a business. And then Google and Facebook and others came along and created this centralized model, which we have today. And they brought those cows under control, and they brought them into the cow shed, and they roboticized, milked them. And what they milk everyone, they provided, free food and board, and they sucked the milk out of people. And that's what people are, cows at the moment. All the users of Facebook and Google and things are cows. They're being provided free services, and they're having their milk sucked out, which is their private data, their attention, for advertising. What Web 3.0 does is the cows take control of the cow shed and the automated systems, and they kick out the farmer, and they run. There's still money in it. The cows are still producing milk. It's still being sold, but instead of them getting nothing but free food and board, they get the full value of their milk. It's the cows taking over the cow shed. And that's what decentralization Web 3.0 does. It brings power back to the people. It brings freedom back to the internet. And that's what this is. That's what this is ultimately about, bringing freedom back to the internet.
Do you believe that in bringing freedom back to the internet by leveling the playing field, at least in the advertising model, that this will allow blockchain platforms like ours to have a better chance at success?
Yes.
Well, let's just say the advertising model is the financial system of the internet. There is almost, the numbers, the amount of money in advertising dwarfs everything else that goes on the internet. Now, you can buy and sell physical goods over the internet, but you go look at the numbers for advertising, it's vast, because advertising is driven by this data thing, this stealing of our data, this bargain that we entered into without realizing, giving away all of our work and all of our data, and at that changing or diminishing the value of that advertising, which is what our case has the potential to do. Because what we're doing is we're telling them, you can no longer choose the way in which you do your business. I mean, there's other huge cases behind this, but that can come after this. But we've got to break this system.
Yeah, stop that, right?
Yeah, we don't want to mention... Well, it sounds like you two are very excited. I'm assuming you'll have the nerves kick in a little bit once you get going, but it sounds like you have a good team. it sounds like you have a
Yeah.
good basis, like I said last time, and now that I understand a lot more about what's actually going on, it makes even more sense. And I'd love to keep following what you're doing. I don't suppose you can let us know when you plan to file?
We don't know exactly yet, but a lot sooner than we were planning before.
And that's because of that little secret weapon you got in the law.
Yeah.
I can hear Brian smiling.
Yeah.
That-
So I just want to more fully just finally end off. This case can bring about a really large transfer of value
okay.
from Web 2.0 to Web 3.0. It can remove a major barrier to Web 3.0 acquiring real-world normie users that we know that has to have. The Hive situation is the same as many other crypto projects. We can't, we need to be able to get regular users. Adoption is the big thing. And by removing the ad ban and then hopefully even maybe giving free advertising, can you imagine if Facebook's and Google's all advertising fees just filled with crypto projects?
Yeah.
So pretty soon the normies will start checking it out.
That's kind of my dream. That's kind of why I like doing this show. I do love turning normies into the Web 3.0. And so you guys are bringing that forward. That's really awesome. I love being a part of this, at least the energy of it and the information and the acquaintance. It's such a pleasure, and I'm really excited to see what you guys come up with, or rather how it proceeds. So keep posting. I'm going to keep spying on you the way I do. I really appreciate having you both. Thanks, Brian, for coming. Thanks, Andrew.
Time for me to go to bed. So,
okay, you guys have a really great night. Thanks again, and hopefully you'll grace us with your presence.
I'll drop the sign-up link in the chat right now.
You guys, go to bed, Brian. Go to bed. Okay, that was awesome. That was great. Does anybody have any questions about that? If you do, go ahead and drop them in the chat, and we can shoot them over to Brian and Andrew. They're really good about getting back to people. You guys can follow them both. They each have their own websites. They have their own usernames. APS Hamilton is Andrew, and then Brian of London is Brian. Brian of London uses that username, but APS Hamilton actually uses his, I forget the name of his firm, but you can look at both. He'll have both. So, Stephen Wood, you are new to me. Welcome to the show. This case is going to have some very interesting and incredibly powerful ramifications. It's a little bit surreal for me at this point. They seem not inordinately confident. So what I mean by that is they seem confident and not inordinately so. Sounds like there may be some good here to be had by all. Anytime, what excites me about it is that we get to move normies into the 3.0 series of the internet, which is kind of my goal always. And by 3.0, what I mean is just introducing the mainstream user into the blockchain community and making it more of an adoptable space. So we can't really do that as well if we're not able to advertise what we're doing here. And once we're able to do that, that'll be a significant thing. And that's something I plan to do as well. So as it currently stands, the only way I can advertise is simply just by multi-posting. So, and I'm only doing it on a couple of platforms, but I do think it's important to get people aware of what we're doing here, whether it's Hive or whether it's something that we wanted to do on Ethereum or whether it's something you just want to do in crypto in general. I'm kind of a fan. So if you guys, again, if anyone here knows Jerry Banfield or knows how to get a hold of him, he could be deeply remunerated for his services as a sweat equity investor, and also witness to the case, which will be very useful. We don't necessarily need him, but apparently it'll make it much easier procedurally to overcome a lot of the objections that defense counsel will likely have, ranging from, as they said, hearsay to relevance to this, that, and the other. Authenticity. It's very difficult to admit evidence that has not been authenticated by the originator of said evidence. You have to have either a witness statement, or you have to have an affidavit, or you have to have some kind of recorded record showing that, yes, this is mine, and this is why it's relevant, and this is what I think about it, and this is how it's affected me. So that's always very helpful. I mean, you can prove it without that, because a lot of the stuff that he has is public record. But please, anyone, if you know Jerry, what we should do is just like inundate him on his Twitter or Facebook or somewhere. Just be like, Jerry, please respond to APS Hamilton. Please respond. So, okay, we'll see you later, Ashby. Thanks for hanging out tonight. All right, next up is the one and only Asher, ABH12345, and I'm excited to have this individual on the show today because he's doing some pretty phenomenal things for the Hive blockchain at the very, very least. And I actually... where did I place your link? I actually had opened up. Here it is. Let me go to where it was. I'm just going to kind of pull up what he's doing currently. It's the Hive Engagement League. And if you'll look at my screen, I do have it up, and I'll also will drop the link for your viewing pleasure. So, okay, so Asher, first of all, I just have a random question, and that's actually about your username, ABH12345. Is there a story behind that? And also, how do we call you? Because I'm just going to call you Asher if I don't have any other options. I don't know what to call you.
Hello. Yeah, Asher's fine.
Okay.
If Asher wasn't taken when I signed up in August of 2016, I would have used that as my username, but it's an account that already existed and it has never been touched, which is a bit annoying. I have sent the account a couple of memos saying I want to buy it, but I never got a response.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah.
Okay, so then can I just call you Asher, or do you go by Abha?
No, Asher's fine. The letters are my initials of my name, and 1205 is totally arbitrary, because I thought it was just, okay, I just need to sign up with this arbitrary username, and then I can pick my username, and then I realized that I couldn't.
You couldn't?
So
you just like typed on the keyboard, blah, 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 blah. So where are you from, and how long have you been with the Steem and/or Hive blockchain?
I am English. I'm from near Manchester in the UK, currently residing in Nottingham.
Okay, Nottingham.
I signed up on my phone whilst I was living in Mallorca in August 2016. Wrote a couple of posts and got a job with the United Nations, and kind of forgot about Steem as it was back then until sort of February, March of 2017. What's his name? Stephen Kendall was spamming Twitter with all these like charts and stuff, which I was quite interested in, and I saw one for Steem and remembered, oh yeah, I've got one of those accounts. Let me go find it and log on. So I bought.
As a sidebar, are you still in touch with Stephen Kendall? And if so, maybe you ought to scoot him in the direction of Andrew.
Well, I think he's still posting regularly on Steem.
Yeah, he might make a good candidate.
I haven't seen anything post on Hive. I'm not quite sure why he hasn't made the transition, but maybe it's worth pinging him on Steem or Twitter to say, oi, what you doing?
Yeah, he might be a great candidate for that class action. He'd be a good one. I think they'd like to have an extra Stephen. Is that his name?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Stephen Kendall, as far as the chart goes, because he was posting so much around that time. I think he was even automated it, but yeah, as far as prices and price moves, he was because he was doing it across sort of the stock market as well, the UK stock market and maybe some US stock.
Oh, okay,
and,
yeah.
I mean, he hit the targets really well. He posted that Steem would go to $1.80 in the summer of 2017, and it pretty much hit exactly $1.80.
What?
Then, yeah, so
that's crazy.
He was on the ball, but he's posting on Steem, so What can you say?
That is really, yeah, what can you say? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Well, and here you are on Hive, and I'm looking at your Hive Engagement League. It's super impressive because this is the kind of thing that I remember thinking would have been really cool like 3 years ago when I was on Steam. And I know there's always been people that have kind of tried to do this, to reward people for positive engagement. The difference here is you're not basing anything around financial rewards, which was never necessarily what other people were. I remember of course, the Minnow Support Project was one. Robinhood was another one that I really liked. Yours is a little different though. You're not necessarily promoting or rewarding or curating content. What you're doing is you're looking at people who are just simply engaging, and you have like 10 points of criteria for engagement. And so the score is made up, I'm reading here on your post, the score is made up from a simple formula which uses the following types of engagement: posts, comments, number of people spoken to, comments outside of your own posts, as in you're commenting on other people's, unique author posts, comments, replies to replies, comments, length and characters, upvotes to others, upvotes to different authors, and self votes. There's no minus score, but there's no bonus Hive. So for instance, if I'm self voting all the time, that may not it may not necessarily affect me negatively, but it certainly, if it came against me and one other person who wasn't doing that, then they would win. Correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're in the top 20, then you're gonna get some Hive paid out from the sponsorship. But if you've self-voted, then you don't get any. So I mean, the league is really for the smaller accounts. So I mean, at the time when I started doing it, obviously the prices were a little bit higher, and a couple of Hive was worth, or a couple of Steam was worth a little bit more than it is now. But you would need to self-vote a lot to surpass the couple of Hive or the one Hive currently that you get. So a lower account, I mean, if it self-votes 20 times in the week, but finishes in 15th in the league, then it's far better to not self-vote and just do a lot of engagement.
So I'm looking at your rewards, your prizes here, and it looks like you've powered up, I don't know, maybe if I did the math, we're looking at maybe like what, 30, 50 Hive? 15, 20?
Yeah. At the moment, it's I get about 50 Hive a week, but that's only due to the people sponsoring it at the moment. I mean, when I first started it at the end of 2017, there wasn't any sponsorship, so I was paying out like the post rewards basically, but
when you say sponsorship,
I had no problem doing that, and then people started to sponsor it. Curie sponsored it for a while, and various other sort of individuals that chuck some money in. But like recently, like 2,000 Hive was given to me by 3 people. So basically, I have like 50 into 2,000 is quite a lot of weeks worth of sponsorship, isn't it?
Yeah, no. So that's what the other question is. When you say sponsorship, are you referring to Hive itself or Hive Power, like delegations? Because you could do the same with either. I mean, you're powering these up, but or are you also transferring funds? Because which one is it?
It's given Liquid Hive obviously by the sponsors, but as far as the prize is concerned, I power up the prize to them. So all the prizes that I give out are powered up Hive. There's also a bunch of like sponsored numbers in there as well, and that's basically up to the individual that sponsors the number to give out whatever they want. They were giving out, some people were giving out the SBI units, the Steam Basic Income units originally, and people give between like 1 and 10 Hive, but it's really up to the individual number sponsors on what they choose to give out. But all the prizes that I give out is powered up Hive.
Okay, so the ones that are up above with that purple icon, those are powered up upvotes, $15 upvotes, $10 upvotes.
Yeah. The top of the list gets 15 powered up Hive, and second 10, and third 5, and then the rest of the top 10 get 2, and anyone in the top 10 to 20 gets a 1. As long as
and it's hard because wouldn't it be nice if you could just give everyone a 15? But at this point, it's nice to just get that acknowledgement and distribute the news and let them feel like what they're doing was valuable, and you're rewarding that. And some of the people on here might actually be in the show today. I know Checkholder comes here a lot. I don't see anyone necessarily. Hey, Shadows. I do see a lot of the people in the room today are actually people who I would have found on this list at one point or another. So it is interesting. So what you're doing is you're basing it on not even an algorithm, but you're just basing it on data that you're pulling from the blockchain. You look at it, look at the numbers, and then you literally pick based on the numbers. You're not just arbitrarily going, well, I liked Joe Handpiper better. It's really just based on numbers, correct?
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the numbers decide how they're ordered. Basically, it originally started from Stella Bell, who is posting again on Hive, and recently posted about her shittiest investment because she sort of kind of left for Ono for a little while and was working with that. But she wrote a good post the other day saying that it was an absolute disaster in the end. So anyway, she's back on Hive, but towards the end of 2017, she wanted to find a couple of people to delegate a fairly sizable chunk of Steam power to. So I did a post and just with the sort of basic metrics of, well, these people are spreading their vote, these people are engaging, pick two. And
I've pulled up the metrics here. I'm assuming that some of them have a higher weight than others.
Correct, yes, but despite people asking me for the formula, which I do tweak a little bit from time to time, obviously it's the same for everyone who appears in the list, but that's the only thing that I don't give out. So the weight of the value of each of the metrics is slightly different. Obviously, if you just write posts, then maybe that one isn't the highest.
Right.
If you comment to a lot of people outside of your own post, then maybe that is a good one to focus on.
Maybe or maybe not, as it were.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's kind of cool. I'm not really a metrics kind of person. Like, I don't go out of my way designing metrics. But what I do like is I like seeing them. And I like seeing people who do them. And I think this is really awesome. It's actually really well thought out. I'm super impressed with it. I love that what you're doing is taking time to reward, and you're using delegations and sponsorships. Obviously, it appears that we have some similar end goals, and everyone that I invite on this show is usually going to have that similar end goal, which is number one, to encourage and promote positive interaction on the platform. Positive or rather sustainable and eco-friendly, sustainable growth interaction. Like, what you're basically doing is, the reason behind this is not just to say, hey, we appreciate you, but what's your end game with this? Like, why would you go to the trouble of saying, hey, thanks for doing these things? What's the value of these things in your mind?
I guess it sort of bases back to why I originally did the first post for Stella Bell. I mean, there's accounts that have come to me in the past saying, well, who's engaging, who's still here, writing comments and stuff, and I'm like, well, here's the list. There's over 1,000 people who've signed up for the league over the past 3 years. Only 360 of those, so about 33% of those are actually, got a score this week. So there's quite a lot of accounts that have left. As far as the retention compared to Steam and Hive in general, if you've been a part of this, then I think the retention rate is like less than 10% on Steam, or maybe even on Hive, maybe even 5% or lower. But 33% retention of the number of people that are signed up sounds pretty good, doesn't it? So just to keep people going, basically, it's been pretty dark couple of years overall.
Yeah.
If you're looking at price, but I mean, and there was no sponsorship for a while because there was no sponsorship coming in. The post rewards were like $5 or $6 at some point, and for the 2 hours that it takes me to do it every week, I didn't really want to give it all away.
Yeah.
But people were fine with that. They stuck around. They stayed involved.
You mentioned signing up. You have 1,000 registered or whatever, people who've signed up for it, maybe 300 or so that are active in it. And my question is this kind of like a I got your back sort of thing? Because you're not necessarily selecting people from the blockchain. You're selecting people who have signed up to receive rewards for doing the types of things that are economically sustainable on the blockchain. So does that mean that these people are going to be more likely to vote you up, which then results in a high voting power and then results in a higher chance of them getting a better vote?
Well, I mean, it's obviously nice to receive some rewards for your putting a post together, especially one which in turn sort of rewards people for being involved. The reason why I have to sign up is because there's just too many accounts. You know, I couldn't really run it for the whole blockchain every week. There's a 1.3 million accounts or whatever. So yeah, you just have to say yes. Can you add me to the list, and you're in basically.
So that's cool. I didn't realize that there was a sign-up requirement. I thought you were just kind of running data on the entire activity of the blockchain. So you're saying that would actually take a little too long.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a few minutes already to run it each week. I don't think Arcane, who I take the data from his Hive SQL, would be happy if I was trying to crunch this data for 1 million accounts.
That would take a little burn power for sure, but it's so cool that you're doing it. I love seeing things that are actually promoting, positive interaction, whether it be making quality posts, whether it be commenting, whether it be curating. These are always kind of the standard how-tos that we try to teach to newbies in the onboarding process, if you could even say that there is one. There's no central onboarding process. I know when I was on Steam, I know that Chorusgate and a couple of guys got together and actually tried to develop like a serious onboarding tool that sounded really good, but in the end, things kind of went south with the actual platform, so it became less viable. But what I'm seeing now with the Hive blockchain is I'm seeing some user interfaces that are more like a vanilla condenser, which are sort of like newbie friendly, so they're not confused by all of the data that you're currently producing. So right here, you've got essentially charts that are for the seasoned user. If I were a noob coming here, I'd be like, what the freak is this stuff? I don't even know what any of this is, which is fine. They don't need to know what this is, but it doesn't mean that they can't also benefit from being in the club, right? So when we're coming onto the platform, coming here for the first time, nobody's really gonna understand any of this. They don't necessarily need to. I mean, looking at the larger platforms that we were just recently speaking of, namely Facebook and Twitter, I mean, if you were really to show the actual analytics of those places to the front-end users, they would be completely scared away. So eventually, I think as we become a more viable space and we have more programs to incentivize the types of behavior that make this place more sustainable, then we'll be able to have a better front end. Right now, though, I know of 3 individuals in particular who are personally funding themselves user interfaces that are making this space a more viable space for the public, for the normie or the newbie, as it were. So what's your thoughts on that? Like, do you see Hive anywhere long term? Do you see us being a viable space long term, assuming we can actually start advertising it as a normal space to be?
Well, the advertising part would be nice. It was really interesting listening to those guys for the first hour. I mean, I heard about it maybe a year or so ago, and it just sounded too unbelievable to be true, really. They've been to the Steam Fest, they've spoken about it, they've obviously got some decent press of late, and they're sticking with it. And by the sounds of it, they seem to have a rabbit or two up their sleeve as well. So it's an interesting one, and if that all changes, then that's going to make a few people plenty of cash, isn't it?
I was just gonna say, I thought you were gonna say it's gonna make a few people happy because they'll be able to, and then I was gonna replace that with, it's gonna make a few people a few bucks is what it's gonna do.
Yeah.
It'll level the playing field.
It is. I mean, I don't believe it's their primary goal. Obviously, it's a nice to have, but they want bigger than that. They want to basically topple them and give the give data and give the content back to the people. Which is
no, I
cool.
do. I think Brian's primary goal is to topple these guys. He just kind of has like these fundamental sort of, I don't know, very conservative constitution type like belief systems that are just lending themselves to like, we need our sovereignty back. We need our own content back. We need it to be owned by ourselves. And you don't have a right to own it, blah, 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 blah. I think that's his main drive. I do think as an attorney, just kind of seeing where Andrew's coming from, I can imagine that a huge part of the power behind this and the like drive is going to be the money, but I do think it's kind of a neat thing for him to be able to say, yeah, I kind of did this thing. Like it's sort of unprecedented, and to have been in a position where he has that crypto background, it's kind of nice too. But yeah, definitely he's going to get some money out of it. Definitely though, I gotta say, it does sound a little bit surreal. I am a little hornswoggled, but the closer we get to the end goal, I'm kind of like, ugh. I keep trying to challenge the guy. I keep trying to like poke holes in his stuff, and I can't seem to do it. I'm like, is this really gonna happen? Maybe it is. And it's not necessarily gonna make our platform like famous, but it'll help. It'll help us to like reach out and do some advertising and stuff. And I'm not saying like we don't necessarily need advertising on the platform itself. I'm just saying we'll have ways to promote this type of, again, the 3.0, the internet 3.0. It's gonna be kind of cool. So, and then when people like you, with what you're working on with this project, the Hive Engagement League, it's gonna become even more viable at that time when more people come. And then maybe you'll get even more sponsors and you can make it a business model. I don't know. I think it's kind of cool. So, but
I mean, you mentioned before about is Hive gonna, could Hive have an impact and stuff? And I do want to mention that I think that Hive, compared to Steam and Blurt and whatever other forks have come off, is the only one to be with. Like as far as not just the community, but if you look at the bigger players that came over, Block Trades and Team, they pretty much wrote the Steam code.
Yeah,
like, they are the gurus of this sort of stuff.
This space.
Blurt's GitHub is dead. Steam's GitHub is dead.
Is it really?
So
Blurt's GitHub is dead.
The Marky Mark wrote a post about it the other day. There's just no activity there. So all the development work has been done on Hive.
Yeah.
With the downvotes and the just did EIP stuff, which seemingly other folks are just trying to get rid of. That's come through years of millions and millions of characters of blockchain text and discussion, and they're just going. To me, they're going backwards. Hive's the only one going forward. So if any of them do make it, it'll be this one.
What about some of the recent issues that have occurred with which, might I add, I'm going to talk about the downvoting and the trolling. Might I add that that's always kind of been an issue on every platform. It's no different than anywhere. You're gonna have downvoting and trolling anywhere you go. Downvoting takes a different form here in that it actually has monetary value. Yeah. So with that said, do you think that that's going to be a major deterrent for mass adoption, or do you think people are going to kind of go, yeah, this is cool, I can do this? Because like, for instance, I mean, I can think of tons of people who've been downvoted, myself included, that it just didn't affect, but I could see how if it really did become an onslaught and I was targeted, like that would be an issue. So do you feel like that's going to have a long-term effect on the growth of the platform, or do you feel like we can overcome that?
I think that it can easily be overcome. Downvoting isn't targeted towards people who are low profile and not doing anything wrong. You're a target if you are earning quite a lot and potentially your content doesn't seem to reflect the value that you're making for yourself. that's where it comes. Or downfall also
Yeah.
comes if you write 50, 70 comments a week and upload
Yeah.
them all, and that's all you do.
Essentially, it sounds like we agree on the fact that the majority of the significant downvotes that we're seeing have less to do with someone disagreeing with what your content is about or any kind of ridiculous bias that may occur, and more to do with the sort of spoken and unspoken violations that we see going on to the long-term longevity of this platform. And so what you're doing here with the Hive Engagement League is you're essentially on a small scale, I would say you're not teaching a whole lot of new people, but indirectly, you are essentially rewarding the sort of, I guess, mentality that we want to have here, the social etiquette, the type of activity that's going to promote good content growth, good partnership growth, networking, community engagement. I mean, we don't just want to reward this because we think it's nice. Like, yeah, I mean, obviously it's nice to be nice, but the reason that we want to reward this is because these are actually the type of behaviors that could create a sustainable platform. If everyone out here in the world were here to just be like, gimme, 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 we could probably go flat in a year flat. But what you're saying is that with all of these downvotes that are occurring, what they're essentially doing is the same thing that you're doing. It's just you're a rewards based and they're a punishment based, but you're both targeting the same types of information. You're targeting people who are doing the things that are sustainable growth things, and the downvoters are targeting things that are not sustainable growth things. You're both, in my mind, kind of doing the same thing. We're after the same goal, which is, hey, don't do that, do this over here, like do this. And some are blue, some are shit based. That is the problem. As a whole, in my opinion, it kind of seems like, aside from the shit based ones and or the occasional like bias ones, overall I do kind of feel like we're headed in a direction where there's a lot less of that kind of arbitrary stuff going on, and it's leaning toward more clean cut. Here's what we're actually doing. My goal, and Blue, you were telling me about the wolf or some instance there, but my goal would be to turn something like what Asher is doing here with the Hive engagement. My goal would be to turn it into something that's sort of the default. Like, I don't know, like if you belong to the blockchain, then you automatically get rewarded for this type of behavior. Here's your reward for the week. Like, wouldn't that be kind of interesting? Almost like it doesn't necessarily require innate garnering a community growth mentality that does it, but also, like, obviously engaging a community mentality is beneficial in itself. But then also on top of that is the layer, oh, here comes a large whale or dolphin or several thereof who can then also upvote you for said community growth behaviors. Like in themselves, maybe you'll get some reward on many levels, but just saying, hey, we like what you're doing, here's your reward for the week. Like, wouldn't it be interesting if there was just like simply a delegated voter pool for that? And right now it sounds like that's sort of what you're doing, but wouldn't it be cool if it was sort of like an across the board accepted thing? I don't know if that's possible, but we could get to that point, don't you think? I mean, ideally.
Yeah. I've been told that the Engagement League is not sustainable were we to grow massively, and I partly agree with it. I mean, I'm still going to list the top 100 on my list and see how it goes, but ideally, engagement through not just Hive, through Twitter, through other social media should be included in these metrics. That, for me, for my level, is not happening. But an interface down the line, Hive.blog, PD, checking out if people have linked their Twitter account with a Hive account, whatever, some back-end database, then their engagement on these other social media platforms, which it could potentially be pulling in new people, should also be included in, hey, well done, you've been blowing the Hive horn on Twitter this week, here's some extra Hive.
Well, and I know that some people are considering gamifying the engagement. So kind of like when you play Sims or you play like Farmville and you go on there and you like grow a crop of wheat and then you will harvest the wheat that you grew and then you're going to get some coins. I mean, there's so many things, like the criteria that you have listed and especially adding maybe like 3 or 4 more to that. Those are the exact type of criteria that we gamify. Somebody could easily gamify. I mean, I don't know how to do that, but I definitely know it could be done. And it would be really interesting to see how the platform growth not only increased, but also the behavior patterns changed and thereby affecting the overall value of the experience, thereby affecting likely the value of the coin and the investment into it. I would just love to see how gamifying all of those platform pieces that you have essentially, you're kind of gamifying it yourself. You're kind of saying, here, you did these things, you get rewarded for it. What if when I come in as a newbie or a normie and I come in and I have like all of these little things that I can do as I go along that have like a gaming experience to it, like design elements and sound elements and coin elements, and you just earned yourself 10 gems for interacting with 15 people, and oh, look at you, you just go like, and it doesn't necessarily have immediate cash value, but just like playing any game, you know, sometimes it's just fun to get a like purple glowy coin. And when you're incorporating it with, okay, if they, after they get to a certain level, they now have learned how to play that game. Now we're getting into real dollars. Oh, look, you just earned 20 Hive. What should we do with it? Are we going to upvote? Are we going to are we going to invest? Are we going to hold? Or are we going to do something else with it, right? Like encouraging good platform use to help grow the interest and the value of the coin and the platform. Like that's kind of what I see here. You're sort of like the precursor to my long-term plans to take over the world. I don't know if you realize that.
Cool. Oh, that sounds good. Yeah, I mean, the engagement is, you know, I wrote 100 posts about with engagement tagged, but it's really key. You get a new user, not so many at the moment, visits the site, they hit the trending page, and they click on a couple of the posts which might interest them, and you know, there's either going to be no comments there or 100. What do you want to see? So where people like Bernie come in and other people who have a larger stake and are basically chopping rewards off these posts which are in the trending page, generally there won't be a lot of positive engagement on those posts. Sometimes like nothing. And
yeah,
you know, that for a new user to come to a platform, see a value, a nice value next to a piece of content, and go, oh, I can do that. I just post something and I get loads of money for it. It's just not what you want.
right.
But, you know, focus on your trending page. It doesn't really matter about the content so much because it can be so varied and everyone's got their own specific interests and stuff. But if there's nothing underneath what's been said, then no one's interested in it.
And I still remember the first week that I started on Steam 4 years ago in whenever that was, 2016. It's like July or August. I do remember being very confused as to, I remember doing this thing with @David where we would consult with one another and be like, okay, is my post pretty good? Like, I remember being like, well, I thought like what I just wrote was like really good, and like nobody voted on it. And I remember being like so confused. And so what I did is I just posted like one thing every day until someday somebody somewhere might have noticed me. Like that's like what it was about. Like, cause I didn't understand. I just thought, well, someone must think it's good. And I did spend I would spend like 3 hours on a post because I thought that that's what it was about. And it wasn't. Well, it had nothing to do with that. It had to do with somebody self-upvoted like made $500. Man, that was back in the day when people were making like $700-800 a post. Remember that? I don't know if you said you were around. So yeah. And then everything just sort of took a turn because people started doing sock puppet accounts, and there was that big debacle over the sock puppets and these anonymous accounts that were being started to downvote people. I mean, it was such an adventure. I don't know how I stuck through that. Honest to goodness, I don't know what made me keep going. I'm seriously not sure how I made it through. It was garbage.
Well, it did get pretty crazy at times. Another point that Blue Robo's just mentioned is like you can put out the best content in the world, but if you're a new user and you don't go visiting other people, especially in the niche areas which your post is around,
Yeah.
then you're just going to remain pretty much invisible.
Yeah.
It's better these days because there are, CureAngel,
Yeah.
OCDV, Curie. They've got a reasonable amount of hype, but they can't trend a post on their own.
But
So,
I still feel
they can kickstart it.
Like, I still feel like going up against someone like a platform like YouTube, where you're just literally a nobody until you've posted repeatedly every day for 2 years. Like, we have that going for us. You could post here a couple of times a week for a few months, and you could gain some headway as long as you're engaging in the community and doing things that's kind of helping to curate, promote, and connect. You can actually gain a little bit of headway here. I mean, and people do actually get voted up for stuff here. Just as a general rule, like if I'm making $3 on a post, I'm like, wow, it's kind of awesome. Even though it's not 35, like I feel super good. I feel like, wow, I got some followers, I got some love. That's really I like love the feeling. You can't do that on Facebook. You can't go on Facebook and after a few months of something gain like that many followers. It's just not done unless you are an anomaly. It just isn't done. You got to take a couple of years at it at best. So,
well, Facebook are going to take whatever money you generate from your content anyway at the
Yeah,
moment.
they are.
So you definitely can't do it there. But I mean, Hive is quiet compared to the mid to end 2017 and early 2018 at the moment. Like if you do arrive as a new user and you consistently post maybe like once a day or 4 or 5 times a week, get around the community, you're going to get picked up by the creation teams, and you're going to gain followers because there's just not that many people around compared to previously. So it's an awesome time to, if you have a 2, 3, 5 year goal as regards to seeing where this place will go, it's just an awesome time to be writing content at the moment because you get $2, well, $2 post, that's what, 5 Hive and 5 to the creators. Steam hit $8, so I just focus on my minimum is I just focus on Hive being worth $1, and then I think, well, my post, that's good enough for me for the day.
That's a good goal.
If it goes any further than that, then everyone's winning.
Everyone's
winning. The people who are just starting out and getting a couple a day.
Yeah, and I think Blue makes a good point. He says that YouTube has a different reward system. It shows views. We only show votes and comments, and he's saying not recommending to track views, but there might be a difference. That's a good point. Because Facebook, at least Facebook Live, shows views as well, shows comments as well. YouTube shows comments as well, but we don't show views. I wish we did show views. I feel like in the early days of Peak, what was it before Peak D? It was remember Peak? Steam Peak. In the early days of Steam Peak, they actually did show views. And I feel like Steam actually showed views at one point as well. And I remember thinking that was actually kind of awesome because I was like, oh, I got a view.
Yeah, I used to live on those as well, and they were being used as metrics by larger accounts in the past to either upvote and downvote posts as well. The thing is, with Facebook, obviously they're central. They can track every single visitor to every single page. As soon as Hive, or Steam as it was at the time, left the native interface and went to the 3 or 4 mobile apps, Steam Peak, Busy.
Yeah.
Like they're all run on different servers by different people, and there's no central place saying, well, this post got visited on this front end, on this front end, so that's 3 views. So basically, the views for about a year just meant were just pointless, basically, because it wasn't a true reflection of actually how many views it had been hit, because there were 7 or 8 interfaces it could be visited by.
That's a good point, but I guess then obviously that could be easily overcome by monitoring just views to, I guess, would the views won't show up on the blockchain. They won't be part of an actual block, will they? They would just show up on the internet.
Nothing to do with that. So basically, it's your web front end server, and so every app at the moment has a different set of web front end servers that they're going to have to talk to each other.
Yeah, they would have to talk to each other, and who's going to do that? Like, they would actually have to share that information. That's not.
And storing any kind of information like that. I mean, you know, unless you totally trimmed it and just said this person visited this page. You know, you don't want IP address. You don't want. There's certain data you just don't want. So it's a bit of a minefield. Yeah. Really.
I mean,
I just don't think it's going to happen.
At the very least, it would be fun to see. It's fun to see who, but maybe some people don't want. At the very least, it would be nice to know that there were views on that interface. I mean, what's so bad? What's so hard about that? Come on.
Yeah. Well, I think PeakD does have. So this guy just posted it up. So yeah, you can get views and apparently unique visitors to your post, but that's only people who hit your post on the PeakD interface.
Okay, well, I'll go check that.
You know, the Hive blog. I use the Leo Finance and 7 or 8 other tribes because I create across those with alt accounts. So I'm visiting pages on 10 interfaces, but only the ones that I hit on PeakD are going to count towards those views. It's a start, and if you know Hive blows up and PeakD gets massive, then those views are going to look quite nice on PeakD. But it's not going to be a full accurate reflection of just how many people did hit that page because they can hit it from multiple spots.
How do I find it from my settings? Is it a setting? I know I've done this before. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Actions, maybe view dashboard. I went to actions and view dashboard. Woo! Okay, I've got incoming votes, outgoing votes, post replies, comments, author rewards, curation rewards. Seems like this is where I would find
there's a
views.
tab. There's a tab next to Hive account that says views near the top.
Hive account views. Oh, okay. Interesting.
And it doesn't look like it's working for me at the moment. Looks rather
Top
empty, so maybe
today.
I've had no views or it's not working.
Views empowered by Matomo open source. Okay, I guess that's one way to do it. I'll go take a look. I guess I have 36 page views on my Vim show, so that's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I have 3 views on some older stuff, but okay. Well, and they took 95 seconds to watch. That's like a whole minute and a half. That's amazing.
That's not bad.
Is it?
For a page. I think the average is seconds.
Okay, well, great. I guess we're doing amazing now. So awesome. Well, thanks for coming, Asher. I'm super loving what you're doing. I think it's kind of clever. I think it's motivating, and I think it's what we need more of. And I would love to see you get some more delegations. So anybody want to go upvote Asher on ABH12345 for his what are we calling it again? Engagement. Hive engagement.
Engagement league, but I get enough votes. I'm happy with my votes. If you're not signed up, go sign up.
Yeah, go sign up. You're getting really good votes, and you're getting good delegation. So
thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're doing great. You're doing better than most. I'm not gonna lie. Like it's pretty impressive. You got like a $30 vote going on there.
I have, yeah. I mean, I've turned up most days for the past 3.5 years, and that does count for something, I think. But I think have been fortunate, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's part of the formula. You just keep turning up. You gotta just keep turning up, guys. All right, well, thanks everybody for showing up today. It was a really great show, as usual. And next week, same time, same place, we're gonna talk about some more exciting stuff. So make sure you follow if you want to know when I'm going live, and we will catch you guys on the upswing. We'll see you around. Thanks again. Remember, I'm the one that put some of y'all boys on. I find it kind of funny how you act like I don't know that song. See the done I've been around, I've been killing it in every genre since the day came up in it. I sit back, sit dance, and enjoy my time. I'm drinking something hella mean, that's why they mad in line. They saying, oh, that they don't like me like all the time. But when my song come on, they always know my lines. Roof. I'ma burn it down in any weather. Proof. My paper make it rain, grab an umbrella. Truth. I ain't never told a lie, I'm about to
New, I ain't new to the game, you better ask them. Roof, I'ma burn it down in any weather. Proof, my paper make it rain, grab an umbrella. Truth, I ain't never told a lie about them actions. New, I ain't new to the game, you better ask them. Round 2 and I'm coming for that knockout. Like Mayweather, I'm aiming for them nostrils. They asking me to feed them, nope, nachos. And if you owe me money, I need that pronto. Driving in my 200, going about 100. I be speeding through the streets, flexing, thumping. You got in your complex, arguing about that complex. Light skin, dark skin, but we all black. Collard greens and chicken wings, it's all yummy. Pandora be squeezing cheeks, she proud of me. And to my mama, she stay loving. So I'ma get this check a crib and a ride and let you stand on the roof. I'ma burn it down in any weather. Proof, my paper make it rain, grab an umbrella. Truth, I ain't never told a lie about them actions. New, I ain't new to the game, you better ask them. Roof, I'ma burn it down in any weather. Proof, my paper make it rain, grab an umbrella. Truth, I ain't never told a lie about them actions. New, I ain't new to the game, you better ask them. They wanna set me up like Watergate, but ain't no all up in my business. They wanna lay me down like Lewinsky, but this bill you gonna be spending. I like my MCM bags with the studs down the middle, the Tiffany watch that shine when the sun hit. I like my Dom Perignon on chip rocks and my lobster on the rolls with the shrimp tops. Don't be wasting my time like them TikTok. I believe that actions speak louder than talk. And you claiming that you banging, then walk that walk. Cause my girls heavy-handed, they might just set it off. Proof, I'ma burn it down in any weather. Proof, I ain't never told a lie.